Very often while building applications, we have data which is a list. That is, it will be in the form of a JavaScript array in general, generally speaking. So that array we would like to iterate through. And for example, we might have a list of products that will be an array of JavaScript objects. And we have to show those details on the screen in the page. So we have to iterate through, right? It's an array. We have to iterate through. And for every object, every item in that array, we want to show maybe a card on the screen, right? With the details of product one, then one more card with the details of product two, etc. Like we have in online stores. So if you have a list, how do you render it? So we have a directive called vfor. Let's see how to use vfor to do this. We'll take a copy of this template. We want to see how to use vfor for list rendering. List rendering using this directive vfor. So of course we have v2. Even view3, it's the same way that we go through and render. You can uncomment, comment, and just check it out. So we need a list of things. So I'm using this hosted server. This is my own server, and you'll find it on workshops-server.onrender.com/workshops. For your convenience, I will just copy this whole thing into an array here. This will be available on GitHub. So you can find the link in the description. So in here, I'll actually paste this, or maybe, yeah, I'll actually paste it, or maybe you can include a script tag again. So maybe I can create a separate JavaScript file. So I'll create a folder called scripts and have a JavaScript object, that JavaScript object here. So I'll just create a file. Let's call it workshops.js. So we'll have a JavaScript object, not const actually, because const does not create global variables. So although generally we don't use var, I will actually use var because they'll create a global variable which can be used in other scripts. So we'll be having two scripts. One will include this workshop.js and one is the script that we have in the HTML. So let's say var. If you're using ES2215 import export, you can actually export this array from this file and import in the other file. We'll just involve including import like module type equal to module you add in the script tag. That's fine. I'll use this. So workshops I have copied. So I'll just paste that here. So we have this JavaScript object. Basically, there's data from here exposed as this global variable our workshops, right? So we can include this script in here. So along with this script, I'll also include this local script, which is in scripts folder /workshops.js. Right. So we'll have a global variable like this. We can check it out. I'll just copy path. No, we don't need this. Paste and check the console and check it as a global variable workshops. And yes, we do have this array. Great. So we have an array of objects. Let's look at that array and understand a little bit about the data. So as you can see, every object represents the details of a workshop, like technical workshop, a training or something. So there's a workshop on AngularJS. Its category is front end. It's a front end framework. It has a unique ID, an identifier, which is unique. So only this workshop will have this ID. There's a description, a HTML description, start date. So you have the date in ISO date string format, end date, timings. Location is an object further with address, city, and state. Modes, image URL, and so on. Like that, you have different workshops. So we would like to show the details of this and in a card layout, one card showing first workshop, second card showing second workshop, and so on. So how do we iterate through this array and pick out these items which are objects and show the details? Let's see that. So first of all, we have to expose the data in the template. Only data returned here can be exposed. This is having a global variable workshops. We just saw that, right? Var workshops equal to that array. So we'll say workshops in the data And that comes from the global variable called workshops. This is a global variable which is exposed in this JS file, workshops.js. So now you can use it in the template. So in this view, we're going to show a list of workshops. List of workshops. And we want to iterate through this array. This is where v_for comes in. So we'll have a div class row. We'll use Bootstrap's grid system to lay things out. So we'll say div class row. And within that, we'll use the column classes. So every row will have three, let's say, three workshop details. Then the next row will have the other three and so on. So class equal to call. It will start off with a full width on small screens. And then for large screens, we'll have a 3-column layout because we want a 3-column layout. 4 out of 12 will go for one card. 4 out of 12. So we'll use call SM or MD4. So on medium screens, there's a certain breakpoint for medium screens. I believe 768 or 982 pixels. So beyond that, it'll be 3-column layout. You can check Bootstrap for the exact number of the breakpoint, the width. So now if we say something like card 1, and you have multiple cards like this inside the row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So this is just Bootstrap. We have also included Bootstrap. If you're wondering where these classes come from, yeah, Bootstrap. So now if we check this, we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's 1, 2, 3, then again 4, 5, 6. Right. So again, just to see it clearly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Again, because 4 plus 4 plus 4, 12, 3 will fit in a row. 12 is the number of columns per row. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have created the layout, right? Now we will add cards. Now, how do we actually, for every item in that array, in that list, how do we add cards? So that's where v_for comes in. So we create just one, and we need to repeat this for every item, for every workshop. So that's where we use the v_for directive. v_for directive. So this div, we want to create multiple of them, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. How many other workshops are that? So we use v_for. And this is how you use v_for. Basically, you say some variable like workshop in workshops, or you can use off also. Either keyword works here. So you might see one of them, in or off. So workshop in workshops. So on the right side is the array. It's called workshops, right? In this workshops is the name of the array. Here it is, workshops. Or rather, it's the one in the template, my bad, which has been anyway set from that array, workshops global array. So what this will do v_for is it will iterate through the array. For every item, it will create one div. Now, if you see how many items we have in this workshop, there are 12 actually. 1, 2, in this particular array, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So we have 12, right? Now you want to display within a card according to that item in the array. So it goes through item 1, then item 2. So this is from item 1, this is from item, this is from item 1, this is from item 2, and so on. So how we can do that? This variable here, what you said, workshop in workshops, this is from the data. So this variable here will take a different item in every iteration. So basically v_for creates different divs. You can check, that's what has happened. So you can see here there are different divs within the thing. With this div, the first item is associated. That's what workshop variable in that iteration will have. When it iterates and creates another div, the workshop variable will stand for the second item in the array. When it iterates and creates another div, this third div will have the workshop set to the third item in the array. So if you say workshop.name here instead of card, is binded workshop.name. This, because why name? Because this array has, as we have seen, every object has a name. So it will display AngularJS Bootcamp. Second card will have React.js masterclass and so on. So now if we see refresh, We can see the names of the workshop: AngularJS Bootcamp, React.js Masterclass, third one, fourth one, and so on. Now it's up to us. So we are basically seeing how to do list rendering. Now it's up to us what details we display. So to get a proper uh, layout for a card, we'll use the Bootstrap's card. I'll go to getbootstrap.com. This is the website for Bootstrap. Go to docs and go to card layout. So you'll find that, yeah. So card displays a box like this with a space for an image, a title and description, and maybe a button. You can customize it. Again, I'd like to reiterate here that we are using plain Bootstrap. This is okay as long as you use just the CSS classes. If you are going to use components that have some JavaScript to run, for example, a closable alert, like a collapsible alert, a closable alert, like dismissing, like this has a close button, this alert, that will involve some amount of JavaScript coding right in Bootstrap. So for example, when you click this, it's dismissed. Such kind of components from Bootstrap, you should not actually directly use from Bootstrap. There is a wrapper for Vue called Vue Bootstrap. Vue Bootstrap. Bootstrap Vue, this one. This gives components, and you have not yet seen what are components, but if you're familiar with Angular or React, you know what are components. So when you come to components, and we are using JavaScript-based components from Bootstrap, we'll actually not use Bootstrap directly. We'll use Bootstrap Vue. We never, almost never do DOM manipulations ourselves in Vue.js because Vue takes care of DOM manipulations. Like it is refreshing the UI whenever we change some data. That's involves DOM manipulation. It's going through an array and creating different divs like we just saw. That is DOM manipulation. That's all done by Vue. It manages the DOM for us through some architecture that it has called virtual DOM, which we'll be seeing. So never we will use any uh, library that does DOM manipulations directly. It has to go through Vue. So it should be, there will be a wrapper for such a library which is built using Vue. That is what we have to use, like Vue Bootstrap. Okay, that's besides the point for now. So we are using just card layout, which just involves CSS and not any DOM manipulation, no JavaScript. So let's copy this, an example, which is this card, and we'll customize it. So in place of a just plain name, we'll have a card layout. One of the things is it's Vue.js, etc. are very strict about the template, the elements. You will have to use strict XML syntax. That's best. So you need to self-close even image tabs. Right? So that's something you'll have to keep in mind. So we'll quickly align this. All right, so we'll just fill in the actual data using data binding or attribute binding. So one thing, I don't want a fixed width. I'll remove this style. Here it's an attribute SRC. So if workshop represents that object like we just saw, then the images URL is here in that object, that is workshop for us, dot image URL. That's where the image exists. You can see online. It's a link to an online image. Again, whatever rights go to whoever is hosting this image, those rights are reserved for them. This is Wikipedia image from Wikimedia, free to use under Commons license. I'm just declaring that. Creative Commons license. So, so we have to use workshop.image URL, right? Data binding. I have specifically attribute binding. So we have seen that colon, and here we have to say workshop.image URL. Again, the alternative text will, let's set it as the name of the workshop. Again, bind it to workshop.name. So if the image doesn't display, it will be useful. Reasons of accessibility and SEO are also applicable. So that's the image. And we can begin to see the data binding at work. Refresh, and we see the images. We'll give some padding within. We'll make this full height. You can make it full height by giving dflex on the call, actually, not on the card. Dflex. So that makes it a Flexbox container. So this is the only child within the Flexbox parent container. So it will align items is stretched by default in Flexbox layouts. What that means is the children, that is this card, will stretch to fill the height of this column, which is a Flexbox container. So now these cards, which don't take up the full height, will start taking full height. We want to also give some margin below this. So below each column, we will add some margin my, or maybe 3 margin in the vertical direction, or you can just say MB or whatever you like, margin bottom, whichever you like. So maybe if you even want to add here margins, you can use my. My is in the y direction, top and bottom. So it's a combination of MT3 and MB3, margin top and bottom. All right, so we get space. Paddings within we'll set. So we'll set within the card a padding. Again, P0 to P5 is there. We'll set P3, sufficient amount of padding. Okay, that looks neat. I'll leave it at that. Of course, we can style more. We can make the images same height. Usually in an application, you will have images which are uniform in size, dimensions. But here I'm just using some online images. So I think this is sufficient for the UI. You can make it better. You can make the images same height using CSS, etc. So that's how we do list rendering. As you can see, these images don't appear because the links to these images now don't, they are dead links. So they don't host these images anymore, but it's working, right? That's how you go through a list of items and show it. Now, one thing to be aware of is whenever you're doing list rendering, uh, sometimes there'll be updates. So not always the things will be the same. Maybe there's an update. You might have a list of things and you'll have a page to edit these details. Maybe you have a list of some transactions if you're having some kind of a fintech app or anything you might show for your app that you're building. The data might be updated through a form, and there'll be updates to this page probably quickly. So there are, or something like Twitter where you have a list of posts or comments, or Facebook or anything like that. So things on your page might get updated. And if there's a lot of items that are rendered, like thousands, when a data changes or when a new piece of data comes in, it's getting added and you have more cards to show. You may not be able to do a good job at re-rendering. It might take time because DOM manipulations are slow operations. So there is one performance enhancement technique while rendering lists, which is a best practice and you must follow it. When you have large lists, it will really be helpful. Really large lists, like thousands of items being shown on the page. Is whenever you use v for directive, on the element that's being repeated, that's the child of it, the one within, sorry, my bad, on that very same element, that's what is being repeated. This div is being repeated, the v for one. You also set up something called a key prop key, and I'm using colon because it's going to be picked up from the workshop object. So this key prop should be anything that is unique to that item. So in this object, workshop JS, every item has a unique ID. Yes, it also has a unique name, so that can also be used as a key. But you should also keep in mind that this is something that is stable. That is, you should use some property which is not only unique. This has ID 1, this has 2, this has 3, this has 3. So it's unique. It's the auto-generated ID in the backend. Basically, the backend is sending us data. Maybe it's the auto-generated ID in the backend. So not only is it unique, it should also be stable. It should not change over time. So this is, in fact, such a thing. Maybe the name can change. You can edit the name of the workshop in your application, probably. So you should use some as a key, anything that is unique to an item in that list, in that array. And stable, it doesn't change. So ID is generally used if it's available. So we'll use that as the key, workshop.id. Again, note that using a colon because it's data binding that key. This key is not a standard HTML attribute. It's something specific to Vue.js. What it will do, we will see in a separate video. It has something to do with efficient rendering through which helps in the in the underlying mechanism of rendering and re-rendering. called virtual DOM. But the idea is it will make updates to the UI very efficient. It'll be quick. It'll reflect on the page very quickly as soon as you set some add an item to this array, remove an item, or edit something. So you should always have it and something unique and stable. Visibly, you won't see anything change. But for large lists, it'll actually improve the re-rendering time. It'll make it shorter, the re-rendering time. So that's it. So do give a key, and we'll see separate sometime later how it helps, the key helps. One more thing you want to do probably when list rendering is you want to use the array index. So let me quickly check that on Vue.js website. So you'll find details here. This is the Vue 3 website. You also have a separate Vue 2 website. So if you go here down, you can see Vue 2 docs. If you're using Vue 2, don't refer to this. Please refer to Vue 2 docs here. Also, so this is Vue 2, as you can see here, v2.vuejs.org, and this docs here is for Vue 2. So please use this. This one, the default one, vuejs.org, is for the vuejs.org. This one is for Vue 3. Also, you have another guide here for migration from Vue 2 to Vue 3. You can refer this if you're migrating code from Vue 2 to Vue 3. Vue 2 support for production support has ended, so they don't give any support in terms of bug fixes, patches, etc. So there's no active development of Vue 2. Vue 3, it continues in Vue 3, all development. So, so if you see the V for list rendering,
with the right tools, you can build anything.
right? We go to list rendering, V4, you can see there is track index. Yeah, this is how you can use, if you want the index of the item 0, 1, 2, the array index, as we understand. So there's a separate syntax here. You say item comma index. So we'll say workshop comma index in workshops, right? So yeah, it's important. So you can also use off, that's what I mentioned, instead of in. Right? So there's no difference as such, but if you want to use off, you can use instead of in. So let's use the index as well. Sometimes it'll be useful. In here, I really don't have any use, but just to demonstrate it. So we are extracting the item plus the index of the item. This is the syntax. And for a change, I'll do it using off. You can use in or off. So you can display, and oh, we did not change this. Let's have the name of the workshop here, workshop.name. Let's put in something else here. Okay, so we can put in the user div. We can put in the location, or we can put in the start date and time. So I'll say workshop dot start date to workshop dot end date. The location as well. Maybe there's the workshop city and state. Actually, if you see this, it's not directly within the object, it's there within location, and that is again city state. So I'll say workshop.location.city and workshop.location.state. And we'll put it on two separate lines. Right, great. So important takeaway here is not this part though. This, of course, we're just doing data binding. The important part here is how we've used index. So I'll also put in the index just for illustration. This is not taking us anywhere, this link. So this is item so and so, I'll just mention. So just put an index. So you can use these variables workshop index only within this part of the template where you're having the v for. So within this part of your template, anywhere outside this div, you cannot use. For example, I cannot use index here. Doesn't make sense. So you can see here it's showing 0, 1. That's the index of the item. 2. So index of the item, city, state, and start date, end date. That's in some standard date string format. We can format it if you like. So we can create methods with the formatting logic. We'll see something called filters later, which is specifically for such formatting work in the template. Filters that we'll see later. So for now, we'll have a format date function method. We'll pass a date to it. This will be a string date. So I'll say str date. And how you can convert an ISO date string formatted date into a proper formatted date. One way to do it out of many ways is you can create a date object and pass that ISO date string format string. And that creates a date object, JavaScript date object. And then you can format it in various ways. One of the ways is just say date.toString. Okay. And that'll create a more readable string and just you return it from this function. So we'll call format date wherever we're displaying the date. So you can actually call these functions anywhere in your template. They're not only for event handlers. So where we are showing the start date and end date, we will pass it to format date. You can call methods in your template line. It pass the date as an argument. You call the function, get the return value, and then that is what you're binding. So it will bind that. It will call the function, get the return value, the formatted date, and it will be shown. You can see a Tuesday, Jan 1st. This is much more readable. Of course, you can just extract out this part. Probably this is 14 characters long. So we can actually say, instead of that whole string, just extract out using using substring. Here it is substring. Right. And say how many, where to start from 0, where to end at 14th character. So that's one beyond the last character. So index for string characters also starts on 0. So 0 to 13 it will take. 14 is one beyond that actually. So it will cut this off here. Now you can see that's much more, actually 15 then. 14, 15. Okay, that's much more readable. Tuesday, Jan 1st, 2019 to like this. End it. Okay. So that index also, if you want, you can use, like we've seen how to use the index.